أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبا القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين روحي وأرواحنا لتراب مقدمه الفداء وقد قال الله في كتابه المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم ولقد كرمنا بني آدم وحملنا في البر والبحر ورزقناهم من الطيبات وفضلناهم على كثير ممن خلقنا تفضيلا صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the hastening of the reappearance of our Imam, please recite a louder salawat. To the extent that you have love for Abi Abdullah al-Hussein, say the loudest of salawat. Assalamu alaikum jameen. Yesterday we had mentioned a verse of the Quran in the very beginning. We didn't get a chance to talk much about it. Inshallah, I'll just mention a few brief points about it and then use it as a little bit of a summary of what we were talking about. And inshallah, move on. The verse of the Quran that I mentioned in the beginning of yesterday's majlis was from Surah Ankabut, in the verse that talks and uses the word of Ankabut, of a spider. It says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم مثل الذين اتخذوا من دون الله أولياء كمثل العنكبوت اتخذت بيتها. The parable of the ones who take other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be their awliya, to be their close companions, their friends, their authority over them, is like the spider when it takes a house, when it makes a house. وَإِنَّ أَوْهِنَ الْبَيُوتِ لَبَيْتَ الْعَنْكَبُوتِ. The weakest of houses is the house of the spider. And this is this sort of idea that we were talking about, is that where are we seeking refuge? Where are we seeking safety in these days of confusion and difficult times? Do we seek it with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or something other than Allah? If we seek safety in someone other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, security in something other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is telling us, it's like the spider's web. The smallest thing can tear it apart. The smallest movement and it collapses. There's no security in it. It's an illusion. That's what we have to see as the reality of our world. It might be, tempting to look at our, bank balances and our houses and our cars and the people around us and the numbers that we have with us and our family and think this is what grants me safety and security. But that's not the case at all. Safety is not in the numbers. Safety is not in the quantity. Safety and security is only and only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We have beautiful examples of the scene in our history. You look at the battles that happened in the beginning of Islam. Very, very stark differences you'll see. What happens in the Battle of Badr? Muslims are very few in number. They have maybe one horse, right? One horse. Vast majority of the people fighting on the Muslim side don't have weapons. They're fighting with stones, with sticks, with things that they could find laying around. They don't have swords. They don't have, there's very few archers, very few people who have spears. And they're fighting at the very least 3 times their number, very well equipped. The Muslims win. Turn to the Battle of Hunayn. Hunayn, the Muslims are much more in number. They have a lot of preparation. They have everything with them. But because it starts to sink into their mind that, oh, we're so great. We have all these numbers, we have all these weapons, we have all these things with us. They start to lose. everything starts to go against them. It's not the numbers that decide things. It's not the material reality of it. And yes, it's very difficult to see that and understand that. But we have to do that, because otherwise we'll always be chasing this dunya. We'll always be an abid al-dunya, the slave of this world. That's not where we're going to end up. Now, we've mentioned that we wanted the contrast of this, of being a slave of this world, is being the slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to take refuge within La ilaha illallah. That kalima, that phrase of La ilaha illallah, that reality of it, is the ultimate refuge, the ultimate place of safety, where I will be protected. Now, in order for me to qualify to be inside of it, we talked about very, very briefly how Imam Rida mentioned that there's conditions, and the condition is the wilaya of the Ahlul Bayt. We have to enter through that door. There is no other door into Tawheed. That is the ultimate door of La ilaha illallah. Now, all of these talks that we've had are about, in general, trying to use these moments, these phrases, these things that we talk to wake ourselves up to the greater reality and try to move ourselves away from a life that's engrossed with this material world and towards a life that's engrossed with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's obsessed with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, sometimes we've talked about the various challenges and things that might come up and stop us and hinder our path. But sometimes one of the things that prevents us from going forward is our short selling of our own potential. That we think of ourselves as very minute and limited beings. I think of myself as someone who's just going to live max, 100 years in this world. And all that I can achieve is just going to be defined based on who remembers me, what's written about me in history, how many family members did I have, how many children did I have, what bank account did I leave behind, what did I leave as an inheritance. I think that's the measure of my success. That's what's going to be seen. But let's put it this way. Even if I was the richest person on the world, if I was the Elon Musk or the Jeff Bezos or whoever I was, right? I had the biggest billion amount, beyond them even. I had trillions upon trillions of dollars. I had all the wealth in the world. If I have that, and that's how I perceive my success, at the end of the day, I will die and none of that will go with me. There is no permanence, there is no lasting in this world. I cannot take the money with me. I cannot take my achievements in this world with me. Unless I make it as my achievement between me and my Lord, then that's different. That's where I need to look to. So we're not saying anything against being rich, against being, having money, against having success. No, we should have that. Have success in this world, but have it for the right reason. The reason why we go after these things is more important than the thing itself. Why I'm going after that money and that material success, the success within my career, is more important than actually having that success itself. Which means that if I have that reason, but I don't have that practical success, I still succeed. But if I don't have that reason, if I'm not looking towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I have that success, then I failed. How can we sort of make that decision? It's when we look to ourselves and see that we are truly meant for something greater. I'm not meant for 100 years. I'm meant for something more. I'm not meant for this limited pleasure, which is filled with suffering, which is filled with pain and hardship. No. This is the test. I'm meant for the result. I'm meant for the next one. When I sell myself short and think of myself as limited to this world, then the best I can accomplish will be an ultimate failure. The verse of the Quran that mentioned in the beginning, لَقَدْ كَرَمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ. We have certainly dignified Bani Adam. We've made him honored, nobled. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that, look, I've made you a special creation, a special creature, distinguished between beyond any other creature. You're incomparable. Why are you selling yourself short? Aim for the stars, aim beyond the stars. When we look at the tafasir that talk about this verse of the Quran, they go and question, what is it that makes and distinguish a human being from all else and all other creatures? What is it that makes a human being special? Most, if not all of the tafasir, boil it down with the help of the hadith to one simple thing, that the human being has this intellect that can discern, that can go beyond the obvious and apparent. It can go beyond what the simplistic thing that animals do. Although, many of those simplistic things that animals do are very complicated. We're not denying that. When you look at the intricacies, even of the spider web that we mentioned, or the bees and how they build their hives, or the ants and how they make their colonies. You look at that and it's astounding. It's amazing. But there's still a very limited thing. What we can accomplish is much beyond that. What we can comprehend is much beyond that. And so our distinguishing characteristic is this intellect. And so if I am defined and granted nobility by virtue of this intellect, then I should ask, where is it that this intellect is leading? Have I used it to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to go towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Now sometimes when we hear the intellect, we become afraid or think that, okay, well, now we're talking about, those philosophers, the scholars, the ones who think, a lot of these. No. That's true, that philosophers and scholars and those great, alim rabbani, whoever they are great and they deserve our respect. But that doesn't mean that it's only them that learn. It's only them that use the intellect. Rather, the intellect is for all of us. It's meant for all of us to use. All of us should be actively using our intellect and using it to go towards Allah. We have a hadith mentioned by several of the Imams, but also by Rasulullah where he says, فَضْلُ الْعَالِمْ عَلَى الْعَابِدِ, the sort of distinguishment or distinguishing of a person who knows, a scholar, over the worshipper is كَفَضْلِ الْقَمَرْ عَلَى سَائِرِ النُّجُومِ لَيْلَةِ الْبَدْرِ. It's like the distinguishment, the betterness of the moon over all of the other stars on the night where there's a full moon. So just how much brighter the moon is over all of these stars is just how much greater an alim is over an abid, a scholar is over a worshipper. Again, although it should be clear, making it very clear, the alim is worshipping. It's not as if the alim isn't worshipping. It's just that he doesn't just worship, he worships with his intellect. His worship isn't limited to a matter of the tongue. He thinks and ponders and realizes why he's doing things. We have great, vast potential within us. We're not this small entity that's weak and powerless. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has granted us great potential. He says that He's created us fi ahsani taqweem, the greatest of. And then yes, He brings us down to this world. ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ. We're put down on this lowest of levels. We have that greatest of potential within us. We're meant for greatness. The reason why it's important to look at it from this light is that sometimes when we're just critical of ourselves and just look at it as a thing of, we're bad, we've done wrong, we haven't done enough, we need to do better. Sometimes we lack the motivation to move forward. We need to also see what we can attain, what greatness is held in store for us, what Allah Subhanahu wants from us. Put it in this light. We call an imam because he's our leader. That means, practically speaking, that I should be emulating him. I should be like him. Which means that I, in my potential, am aiming to be like the imam. So think about how great and how much we revere the imams, how great we acknowledge their stations. That's what the potential of us are. And yes, we know that we're not going to reach them. Right? They're much beyond us. We're not going to reach them. But that's what we're aiming for. We're aiming for the absolute perfection of what humanity can achieve. That's what we have in store. We have the potential of being like the imams within us. Our nature is like that. We are created like that. If I have that kind of potential, why would I sell myself short? It's like this. You give, something that happens when young children, they don't understand, the worth of money. Right? So you give young children like $100 bill, right? But they don't understand the worth of $100 bill. They just see, it's paper and, it's not very attractive and things. Someone else says that, look, I'll give you this shiny coin. It's not this boring color. It's this copper color. It's very, shiny. You can flip it. You can play with it. You can roll it. You can, all these things. The kid will probably trade you the $100 bill for the penny. Because they don't understand the worth of what they have. They don't understand what they have to lose. That's what we're doing in this life. If we don't take that path towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's like trading a $100 bill for not even a penny, for a speck of dust. And not even the $100 bill. We're trading infinite dollar bills for a speck of dust. We have to wake up to realize that. The things that we have within the Quran about Jannah and its descriptions of gardens and rivers and all of these things are there for a reason. They're there for us to contemplate on and realize that we're meant for something greater. We're aiming for something that is beyond compare to anything within this world. And so if I can attain that, if that's what I have available to me, why would I trade that or sacrifice that for just a few years of pleasure here? And that pleasure too, it's not a pure pleasure. Right? Our pleasure in this world is always mixed with hardship and suffering and loss and pain. The nature of this world is like that. Even the richest person you'll find will not have a life of pure pleasure. It's not possible in this world. So why would I give up that for this? It wouldn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. When we wake up to this reality and see that we have this kind of potential, then we start moving and pushing ourselves. Then we have this eagerness within ourselves that being is worth it. It's worth it to make these sacrifices. It's worth it to go under the difficulties of obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because I'm aiming for something. I'm attaining something. I'm not just losing. I'm not just sacrificing. We have a verse in the Quran. It says, مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يُقْرِضُ اللَّهُ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا. Who is ready to give Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala a goodly loan? What does a loan mean? A loan means that whatever you give is saved. You never lose that. It's going to be returned to you. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that, look, I made haram for you riba in this world. You can't have, interest-based loans in this world. But this loan that you're doing with me, فَيُضَاعِفْ لَهُ أَضْعَافًا كَثِيرًا. I'll multiply it infinitely. Multiply again and again and again. Beyond that, think, does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala not own everything in the first place? What I'm doing by giving my life in service to Him is not something that He doesn't already own. If He wanted to, He could take my life. He doesn't need my permission. He doesn't need anything from me. And so not only am I giving it for my own benefit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what I'm giving was His in the first place. There's no loss. I didn't give anything up in reality. I didn't have anything. I'm only gaining. It's the purest form of gain imaginable, where the giving is all being done by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and I'm just receiving. That's the reality. And yes, we're not ignoring the reality that for many of us, for most of us, we see a lot of it in the eyes of suffering, in the eyes of pain. We're not denying that. It even happens to the ma'asumeen, right? When Rasulullah, when he loses his son, right? Qasim, he started crying. One, I don't know if to say mal'oon or not, but close to a mal'oon, started asking, almost like, poking at the Prophet, saying, don't you believe in the hereafter? Why are you crying? Right? Rasulullah says that, yes, of course I believe in the hereafter. Yes, I know everything will be seen. The soul is not disappeared. That doesn't change the pain of separation. The pain of losing a son doesn't change that. So we're not ignoring the pain. We're not ignoring that there is hardship and difficulty. There is that. We're acknowledging that. But we're also acknowledging not that there's just a reward for that hardship, but that hardship itself, that exact hardship, is something beneficial for. Just as we mentioned about Imam Hussein al-Islam, that when he saw in his dream of Rasulullah, that conversation, Rasulullah mentions to him that there is a station meant for you to attain that can only be attained through Shahada. So it's not just that Shahada is difficult and hard. That same Shahada is the elevation of Imam Hussein. That's the eyes that we have to see the world. And yes, there's plenty of it that's difficult. Now, there's a few verses of the Quran that I wanted to mention, going back to the idea of the intellect and how we should be increasing our intellect. But before I get to there, I'll mention a story of one of the great ulama that we have, as we've been doing for the past few nights. We'll do one this night as well. One of the great ulama that we had, relatively not too much in the past, much more recent than the previous ulama that we've talked about of Syed Awal and Syed Thani. One of the ulama that we had is by the name of Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari. Now, Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari is actually one of the students of Sheikh Ansari that we had talked about several nights ago. So he learns within the Hawza of Najaf and Karbala. That's where he studies. Now, the Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari, if probably many of the Iranians know, if they don't know themselves, if they ask their fathers, then their fathers or their grandfathers will have known that this Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari is a very famous Membari. His speeches on the Member were extremely moving. They changed people's lives. That people who were engrossed with sin, when they heard him speak, they would leave everything behind. A person who would always be, a gambling addict, just hearing his speech, they would go and break all of their, all of those tools of gambling. And he was that kind of personality. But he didn't start off that way. In terms of, his speeches, he mentions this himself, that when I started speaking, there was two problems. One is that in Najaf at that time, in the house at that time, it was seen that the scholars who aren't worth much will go on the member. Right? The ones who aren't, really good at their studies, who aren't really going anywhere, those are the scholars that were going to go and speak on the member. Those are the ones who are going to give the speeches. Those are the ones who are going to say the majalis. And so that was one problem. Right? Now, at this time, Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari is extremely high. He's the peak of the ulama. But there's this in the background. Right? In the background, other scholars are looking down on him. Other people are looking down on him. They're saying that probably he's just like any of the other ones that are going in the member, not worth much. The second thing is that for some reason, no matter how hard he tried, No matter how hard he could, he studied and prepared for speeches, he just couldn't remember things like by memory when it's time to give the speech. He just couldn't do it. Like it just everything that he meant to say would erase out of his mind. And so, in order to give a speech, what he was forced to do is have an actual book of hadith or a book of some other scholar and basically read through it. And just be reading and then on the spot explaining, reading from the book and explaining. So obviously that's not a very attractive speech. Right? People obviously wouldn't like that too much. Now, the story is mentioned by Muhaddith al-Nuri, who is the compiler of a hadith compilation by the name of Mustadrak al-Wasa'il. But he mentions in this book, not in this book, but in his separate book, he has a separate book about the dreams that were seen by scholars. Within that, he mentions a dream that was seen by the Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari. That Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari, in his dream, like this whole event of him being unable to give speeches happens for about a year. It's approaching the next Muharram. He's getting really worried. He's like, I need to do something. I need to find some way to be able to give a proper speech. So one time he goes into sleep and he sees a very vivid dream. In the dream, he sees that he's in Karbala. And it's on the day of Ashura. It's very near to the day of Ashura. And he sees himself in the tent of Abi Abdullah Hussein. And Abi Abdullah Hussein turns to Habib ibn Madahir and says that we have a little bit of oil, we have a little bit of water. Let's cook something for our guest. Right? The guest being this scholar, Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari. They cook something. Abi Abdullah and Habib ibn Madahir cook something for Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari. And as he's eating that meal, he wakes up. He wakes up and he realizes that he's not in Karbala, he's in Shushtar, he's still there, he's not, he hasn't traveled anywhere. The next day, as he starts preparing for speeches and things, all of a sudden, it's not just that his memory has massively increased. He's starting to understand things that he never understood before. He's seeing connections that he never knew before. He's seeing the Masa'ib of Abi Abdullah Hussein in a way that he never even pictured before. And from that moment onwards, his mimbar, when he went and gave on the speeches, it can maybe be claimed the most popular mimbar, the most effective mimbar within Iran. All of Iran. Okay? That one dream, seeing that, again, the khulus of this man. You could have said, he had so many times where he could have turned around and said no, right? He could have said that, well, in the background, everyone is saying that whoever goes on the member is someone who's failed. Well, I obviously haven't failed in my studies. Like he's at the highest level. He's a marja. He's a marja taqlid. Right? He didn't need to go on the member. He went on the member. He wasn't working out for him. He couldn't remember, but he still went in. He might have been embarrassed by having to read out of a book. He still did what he could. He saw it in whatever he was doing, especially for the azah of Abi Abdullah Hussein, that was worth struggling for. He wasn't ready to give that. He was rewarded for it. There's one other story I want to mention about him. When he was invited to go back to Iran, he was invited by another great scholar by the name of Mullah Ali Kani, who was living in Tehran at the time. Now, in Iran at the time, the general sort of rulership is the Qajars. The Qajars are the ones who are in charge. And specifically, it's Nasruddin Shah, who is the ruler at that time. Now, when he comes to Tehran and he starts giving his speeches there, he attracts a massive crowd because he's changed. As we talked about, his speeches are now extremely moving. Everyone who sits in it becomes a different person coming up. So he attracts a bigger and bigger and bigger crowd every year. Eventually, this Nasruddin Shah wants to meet him. And he hears of him and says, no, I want to also meet this person. So he gets, he calls him, summons him to the court. So the Sheikh Ja'far Shushtari goes there and he enters into the court. And he says something really interesting. He says that even though I'm Irani by birth, I was raised in Iraq. Iraq is where I was born. I was raised there. That's where I sort of, all of my cultures and customs are going to be more like an Arab than in Iran. And of the cultures of an Arab is this, that if I'm invited, if a guest is invited somewhere, then they can ask their host for 3 favors. So I want to ask you for 3 favors, he says to the Shah. The Shah is looking and says, sure, I'll do it. Whatever I can, I'll do it. Because he's really entranced with this figure, so he wants to please him. So what are these favors that you ask? So the first thing is that there's a small city, outside of Tehran. They've been having difficulty with the profits of this year for the crops and things and farming. And they sent a request to me to see if I can somehow find a way for them to not give taxes this year, or to give less taxes this year. So my first request is that, you lessen their taxes. Nasruddin Shah says, okay, no taxes for them. I won't take a single, bill from them, single amount of toman from them. I won't take it at all. Second request. So the second request is that I see within Iran even, the Christians and the Jews have a very specific day that's off for them. The Christians, they take their Sunday off. The Jews, they all take Saturday off. The Muslims, though, they're not doing that. Muslims, whenever, they feel like it, whenever there's a problem, every individual will decide they'll take off. And they'll take off on a random day of the week. There's no set thing. So my request is this, that you make Jummah, the Friday, a day off for the Muslims. Make it a nationwide thing, that Friday will be a day off so that we can all pray Jummah. We can have this Jummah prayer and we can live in this practice of praying Jummah. He says, okay, accept it. And this is actually the beginning of the much more spread of the prayer of Jummah within Iran, is from this moment. Third request. And third request, I don't know if it'll get me in trouble or not, but I'll say it. It is history, it's reality, so we'll say it. Third request. He says that there's a practice in the Azadari amongst the Iranians that's not proper. What is it? It's that when they commemorate the martyrdom of Hazrat Qasim, they think of this fairy tale that's been repeated year after year of him being married in Karbala. And they do something to commemorate this marriage of Qasim. So this is not only something wrong historically, but it's also an insult to Imam Hussein. And I can't bear this insult. So I need you to make a declaration to discourage people from talking about this wedding of Qasim as a thing of Azadari within Muharram. He accepts this third one as well. Now in return, this Nasruddin Shah says, well, I have a request for you, right? Says that my request is 2 things. First request, I hear that you're about to go to Mashhad. Because of your popularity, 2/3 of Tehran wants to go with you. Now, when they go to Tehran, if they all go to Mashhad with you, the capacity of Mashhad is not, they can't deal with it. There's not an ability for that many people to go at one time. So tell the people to not all go with you. Go in stages, go in shifts. Don't everyone go with you. And if they do that, the whole economy of the city would shut down. Nothing would be able to be done in Tehran, and Mashhad would be overloaded. It would be impossible. The second thing is that, I have some money that I want to give you to sort of support yourself, your followers, whoever's with you. Now, Sheikh Jafar Shushtari says, the first thing I accept. First, your first request, it makes sense. I'll tell the people. No, not everyone should come with me. Come, in stages. Don't everyone come all at once. But the second request I can't accept. I don't need the money. My travel has been taken care of. My things that I need are done. The Shah tries to insist, he insists back. Eventually the Shah says, well, okay, you don't accept that? I have this ring, this very precious ring. Take this ring and keep it with you so that whenever you pray, you remember me in your dua. Here too, Sheikh Jafar Shushtari takes the ring, wears it for a few minutes, and then says that from now on, I'll remember you in my dua, and then gives the ring back. Says, now this is my gift to you. Now, again, why this is happening and why this is there's a whole history of these Shahs, especially the Qajar period within Iran, the terrible things that they did to butchered Iranian culture from the influx of foreign influence and all these things. It wasn't a positive person that was saying this. Nasruddin Shah is not someone that we're praising at all by any means, right? And so there's a reason why Sheikh Jafar Shushtari is interacting with him in this way. But the thing that we want to see is this, is that this man, by his ikhlas, by the purity of his sincerity, and complete, not afraid at all, goes and changes the trajectory of things. Within Iran, I doubt you'll find a single place, maybe you'll find some place that I'm not aware, maybe a very, very cultural place, that talks about this event of Hazrat Qasim in terms of a wedding, in terms of this, and celebrates it and does things of that nature. Maybe a few places. The vast majority don't. Vast majority of them don't mention it at all. Don't say it at all. To the extent that it's probably become erased from the public memory. But this was even a thing that was a extremely prevalent practice within them. Not only that, he has a mission in mind. He's looking at things clearly. What does he ask for? He asks for the needs of the people. He asks for a practice and a sunnah to be established that's not just for that time, but for forever. The establishment of Jummah being a holiday, a day off, so that this practice of the prayer can be established. That's a scholar who lives and breathes Islam. And there's many, many other stories that could be talked about Sheikh Jafar Shushtari. A lot of things that can be said about him, but we'll keep it to there for now. Just very briefly want to go back to this idea of the intellect. Right? This intellect that's seen in men like Sheikh Jafar Shushtari that live this life. If I want to do the basics of that, take the first steps, what should I do? What should I do to enliven this intellect within me? And if, I was thinking of this question to myself, and I thought, what better place, what better thing to turn to than again to the Quran? In the Quran, we have someone known for his intellect, who speaks and gives advice. Hazrat Luqman. Hazrat Luqman is known to be wise, known for his intellect. And there's a surah that's named after him, in which he gives advice to his son. And he gives a series of advice. So I want to mention a few pieces of the advice that he gives to his son, and see what can we understand, what can we sort of apply of those advice in our own lives. One of the things that he says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. It says, وإذ قال لقمان لابنه وهو يعظه يا بني لا تشرك بالله إن الشرك لظلم عظيم. Says that, and it relates the story when Hazrat Luqman says to his son while he was admonishing him, saying that, "Oh my dear son, do not do shirk with Allah. Do not have any partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala." Why? Because shirk is the greatest of oppressions. No greater oppression can be done than doing shirk. Again, we talked about that, of how sometimes the greatest oppressor is our own soul, our own self. Later on, I'm skipping several things in the interest of time. Another verse says, "Ya bunayya, aqim as-salah, wa'mur bil-ma'ruf, wanha 'anil munkar, wasbir 'ala ma asabak, inna dhalika min 'azmi al-umur." Says that, "Oh my son, establish salat, pray, enjoin the good, do amr bil-ma'ruf, forbid the evil, wanha 'anil munkar, and then wasbir, have patience with that which afflicts you, the trials, the tribulations, the hardships. Tolerate them, have patience. That is min azmil umur. That decides things. That's the decisive factor. If you don't have this patience and tolerance, if you don't have this steadfastness, if you don't have this within you, that no matter what it takes, I'll do it. I'll keep going. I'll persevere. I'm looking for a teacher, I can't find it. I'll still go and go and go and find someone. If I don't have that within me, then I'll fail. This is what I need to have. I need to have this kind of decisiveness. And if you look in Karbala, in the caravan of Imam Hussain, one of the characteristics that perhaps you see the most out of any other characteristic is this characteristic of perseverance, of sabr ala al-haq. that I'm going to persevere on the path of truth, no matter what. No matter the hardships, no matter what anybody else is saying. From the very beginning, people are telling Imam Hussein not to go to Kufa. Sometimes something whispers in my ear that did Imam Hussein make a mistake? Right? If he didn't go to Kufa, he would have been saved. And he could have gone to some other place. Why didn't he choose at the beginning? Didn't Imam Hussein know what the people of Kufa did to Amir al-Mu'mineen, his father? Didn't he know what they did to Imam Hassan, his brother? If he knew that, why did he still go? It's because the calculus of Imam Hussein, the decision-making paradigm is not what the immediate result in this world is. It's about what is my wazifa, what is my responsibility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, if there's a people crying out for help, then you have to go. Yes, they might betray you. They might stab you in the back. That doesn't change your obligation. What does that mean for me? It means that if I'm looking at the people around me, my family, my friends, and I think to myself, how quickly do I say that this is a lost cause? This person's not going anywhere. I've been bitten too much by this person. I can't handle it anymore. He's asking for my help again. He's going to betray me again. He's going to stab me in the back again. That's not how I'm Muslim. That's not how the caravan ever went. I don't know how many times we need to repeat the story of Hazrat Khurj for that to come into our minds. After everything that Hur did, Imam Hussein accepts him with open arms. Can we imagine that? That kind of tolerance and patience of being on the path of the truth, where you're willing to accept the changing of the hearts, even after they've done the worst of things. But if they're showing an inclination to the truth, you open your arms, you pull them, you take them with you, as much as you can. That's what we learn from Karbala. That's what we learn from the lessons. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Your brothers and sisters, in the line of this ziyarat that we read, the second person that we're doing salam to is the son of Imam Hussein's son, Ali al-Akbar. It's difficult sometimes to talk about the masa'ib of some of the people in Karbala. It's difficult to think Ali al-Akbar is a grown man on the plains of Karbala. By some accounts married and has his own children. On the way to Karbala, Ali al-Akbar is the greatest source of support for his father. Whenever Imam Hussein is feeling weary, or is feeling troubled, it's Ali al-Akbar that gives him support. It's Ali al-Akbar that is the heart of a caravan. Because whenever the people wanted to be reminded of Rasulullah, all they had to do was look to Ali al-Akbar. He was the one who resembled Rasulullah the most. On the plains of Karbala, on the day of Ashura, whenever someone went to ask for permission to go onto the battlefield, Abu Abdullah would try to convince them not to go, would try to stop them from going, try to give them an excuse to run away. But when it came time for the Bani Hashim, when it, when it came time for Ali Akbar to ask his father for permission, Imam Hussein immediately gave him permission. He said, "Go, my son." As he's going, in a narration, it says that Imam Hussein starts to walk behind him slowly. Says, "Oh Allah, bear witness. I'm sending Asbahna, Khalqan wa Khulqan wa Mandiqan ila Rasulillah. I'm sending the person that's the closest to Rasulullah in his manners and his appearance and his speech." And the Akbar fights valiantly on the battlefield. There he comes back on time. He comes back to his father. He says, "In al thirst is killing me. The weight of my armor is bearing down upon me. Is there any way for me to the heart of Abu Abdullah at the moment? But he has to tell his son, "Oh, give her, yeah, oh, my son, the invitation. Fight a little bit more. Your grandfather is waiting for you with a cup of water, after which you'll never be thirsty again." Ali Akbar goes back into the battlefield to fight. And narration is mentioned after a period of time. He struck. When he struck, the horse goes to go instead of going more towards the tent. He goes further to the enemy. He calls out, "God, I'm going to my you say the body of his son." But when he reaches the body of his son, the Akbar has passed. He comes and falls to the ground. He brings the Akbar. He says, "You want to It takes something like Zainabiya to the tent and tell somebody else to take Ali. Come on, and help the thing. Time when the caravan is Zainab is being forced to come on without any time. King, morning, والذين تتبعوا ينقلبون مات بوسعيد